powered by Reviting, streaming from the Reviting Digital Studio. It's the David Daily. Exploring frontier technology, artificial intelligence, quantum innovation, and the intersection of faith, funding, and the future. Here's your host, David Goki.
Welcome everyone to the David Daily Show here, streaming live on LinkedIn, on YouTube. We're on Twitch, Twitter, X, Instagram, and Facebook. We're incredibly excited to be here. And we have another episode of Funding, Faith, and Future, where we lean in talking to experts, angel investors, venture capitalists, and business operators who are excited about the future and have experience with funding and a background in faith. And today, I'm very excited to bring on our special guest, Miss Nita Laad, who is the CEO of a company here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And she's focusing on AI and product. And I can't wait to welcome her to the stage. Nita, it's such a pleasure to have you here on the show today.
Thank you, David, for including me in this conversation. Super excited to be part of the show.
Awesome. So why don't we just jump right in, and if you can introduce yourself just a little bit so that the audience knows who you are and who you serve with Nexia.
Absolutely. So my name is Nita Laad. I'm a founder and CEO of Nexia AI. We are a San Francisco Bay Area based applied AI company, and our mission is to build an end-to-end workflow platform for product management teams to accelerate product teams to build better products faster.
Better products faster. I love that. And you have a deep expertise, even coming from Cisco for quite some time and HP as well. I'm ex-Microsoft and products, so I'm really excited to get into the weeds here with you. So we're going to jump right into our first topic category on funding.
Time to talk about funding.
Now, you're in stealth mode. You're building this awesome AI company, Applied AI, so very practical. What does building and funding Nexia AI actually mean to you? And how does funding play a journey in your startup?
Absolutely. So I'll start with a little bit of a story on why I started this company, and then we'll get into funding and our plans to kind of grow the company and our customer base. Several years ago, as you rightly described, I have a background in product management, and I was leading a very large P&L for a Fortune 100 company, and in the scale of billions per year. We had an escalation with one of our customers that represented about 10% of our ARR, and my lead PM did not join that conversation. When I questioned him about it, his response to me was, I was super busy writing up a document. I was so busy writing a PRD that I could not attend the customer meeting. And the choice point that I have is to either finish this document and submit it today, where we can submit our requirements for the roadmap for several hundreds of customers, or I decide to serve one customer today. And that trade-off and that story forever stuck with me. And the reality of product management is that this highly impactful role is today burdened with a lot of administrative debt of writing documents and building analytics. And with AI coming into the picture and unlocking so many use cases in 2024, 2025, it just became a very natural move for me to go and solve and commit into this mission to accelerate product teams. Now, when it comes to funding, my belief as a leader is the best and the healthiest funding a company can have is the revenue that you get from your happy customers and a very disciplined management of your margins and your profits. So I'm a very big believer in driving rapidly towards product market fit, bootstrapping companies, and creating a very healthy revenue profile, even before you decide to kind of pursue the traditional funding path, which is inception programs, accelerator programs, or traditional venture capital institutional kind of funding. So that's the path we are on right now. We've recently, as of March, launched the first version of our product. We're working with some amazing customers and continuing to shape that product to fit well into the customer's needs. And that's where we're at. But I'm happy to get deeper into this conversation as much as you need to.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. So let's just kind of start from that beginning. What led you from that administrative PRD meeting? By the way, I can't not believe that someone said, I'm working on a product requirements document. I can't talk to customers. I mean,
It
I don't
is
know.
true.
I don't know how relatable that is for some folks out there, but even at Microsoft, we had this same thing. Like, we're building all these requirements in silos, but not enjoying the voice of the customer. And in technology these days, the voice of the human customer is so important, especially when you're building a startup. So, how do you include the voice of the customer as you're building?
Absolutely. So, one of the things that I did right at the inception of my company is I spoke to hundreds of customers. These were product managers, individual contributors, sometimes head of products who are team leaders, general managers who own P&Ls of very large products, right from SMB to enterprise and across different verticals. Like you have tech, you have finance, you have healthcare, and I first validated the pain point. How does this pain point kind of represent itself to multiple customer types across different verticals and different segments? And what you start to see as a founder are patterns, the kinds of documentation and the kinds of analysis and the the period of the analysis or how frequently you're conducting that analysis kind of changes with customers, but typically looking at voice of customer, qualitative, quantitative, comparative analysis, conducting requirements, interviewing customers. This is standard protocol in product management. And so I used my quantitative and qualitative surveys to build deep analytics on which customer I was going to serve when, and which was the specific pain point that we were looking to serve. So right now, the biggest pain point that we heard lies still within that outbound product management space, where there's a challenge kind of getting that voice of customer into analyzed directly into product requirements that aligns with your strategy. Teams typically spend anywhere from a week to several weeks kind of running these analyses. Our platform can actually conduct this analysis across thousands of customers in a span of less than 3 minutes. And so significant acceleration of bringing the voice of the customer into your product requirements. And we're excited to kind of take it to more product managers as we continue to scale.
That's awesome. I'm really glad that you're focusing on the voice of the customer, Nita. That is such an important aspect. And those interviews as well. So, what does interviewing your customers look like before you ever write a requirements document? What does that journey look like as you're really better understanding the pain that your customers and partners have?
I think every conversation with your customer has to start with their strategy, their business, and the outcomes they are trying to drive in their businesses, and then aligning what you bring to the table to help them drive to that outcome. For example, we have tech customers that are highly accelerated right now in their engineering functions. So they are using AI assisted coding to quickly build up their product code base. However, their big pain point is they don't know what to build rapidly yet, which is where Nexia AI's platform comes in, is synthesizing requirements and points of view, not just across your direct conversations with your customers, but also your go-to-market teams. What do your direct sales teams that kind of handle your strategic account base, what do they need to hit and accelerate their quotas? What do your partner teams need to be able to scale your solution across markets and regions where you naturally don't have scale. So we sit with our customers to figure out what is the specific outcome that they're trying to drive within their strategy. What kind of personalization do they need with AI? Because you cannot create the same outcome, or the same idea list or the same requirement list for every customer. It has to be uniquely personalized to their business. So we sit with them, we talk to them, we listen to them on what specifically they are looking to drive within their business. And then we talk about two more elements, which is, do you have the right data for AI to be able to give you those outcomes? Because one of the most important things with artificial intelligence is it relies on a solid foundation of data within the enterprise. So that's extremely important. And second is it relies on the mind share and readiness of your culture and your people. And so our conversations with our customers typically span these three key areas. One, what are the outcomes and strategy that you have across that you want to scale across your business? Second, what kind of technical architecture, enterprise architecture do you have? Is your data ready for AI to consume? And third is, how ready are your people to adopt AI, to adopt the future of work, to adopt a new way of working fast in this new model?
I like that. The three are, I heard you say, strategy, architecture, and readiness. And we could have a full episode, I think, on each of those inside the context of product management and really geek out on that. But I really like this idea of readiness, especially bringing this back to the funding topic, right? So you're suggesting, right, that you want to be revenue funded, but you may potentially take on um, funding in the future. So my question for you, Nita, is what separates a $10 million outcome from a $1 billion outcome?
It's product market fit. So the most important phase that a company needs to hit is getting crystal clear on the ideal customers that you are looking to serve. And you've kind of ensured that you have a product that that customer tends to love, and you have a product that is almost in a product-led growth motion, which is when your customer tries the product, they love it so much that it kind of adopts itself across the organization. Then it adopts itself across multiple different product lines, and you're scaling through your customer testimonials where you are no longer the entity trying to push that product into your customer base, but your customer is actually pulling the product in, because you're actually solving a pain point that is so deep that the market is consuming your product versus you trying to artificially kind of buy customers. So the most important phase a founder or a company has to get to is product market fit. Now, when you're at product market fit, you have a strategic choice. At that point, one has to decide the trajectory of scaling. Every founder comes to that point where you have to figure out, what kind of window of opportunity am I playing with? If you are in a market segment where there is a lot of competition, you have an extremely fragmented market, and you have a window of opportunity that's rapidly closing on you, and it's one that you cannot go after organically, I think venture capital makes 100% sense in that case, because you know how you're going to invest and spend that venture capital, how you're going to scale, and the kind of trajectory or multiples that you're after. A lot of founders make the very common mistake of taking on venture capital very, very early before they hit that product market fit. And what that results in is defocusing of your mission, which is now you have your focus on customers and the product. But when you take on venture capital, you're also having a responsibility towards your investors, because now you have the added responsibility of multiplying that investment back into their fund. And many founders have not thought about this very deeply. So to me, every founder and every business has to think about when is the right time for the business to take on venture capital? What does my window of opportunity look like? What kind of scale can I achieve with my customers in this window of opportunity? And what is my strategy with the company? Every founder or every founding team has a very different outcome they're looking to drive with a company. Some want to exit the company after 3 to 5 years. Some want to build long-term generational wealth. So you have to be extremely crystal clear about why did we found this company? What is the mission of this company? When does venture capital make sense? And am I ready as a leader to kind of take on this responsibility to kind of multiply that venture investment for my investors? And I think when you have clarity across these elements and you have achieved product market fit, that is typically for a B2B AI SaaS company the right point to raise a large round of funding. Now, there are use cases where you have to very early take on, a pre-seed round to even build up your initial MVP, and that could be you're in a hardware space, you're in a deep tech space that has a very long time to value for customers, and that's typically a different business than the one that we're in. But that's where I stand today.
Yeah, I love it. You hit so many awesome pieces there and topics. Definitely like a good dinner party, right? Where you start with the appetizer, and that's maybe, hey, I want to leave my company today, right? And so people may tuning in, especially on LinkedIn, maybe thinking, oh, I'm ready to make that next career transition. But once you're there, having that strategy piece and focusing on the strategy piece is so important. And then to your point, if you don't have product market fit, if you don't have a spark in your fire, if you haven't eaten your appetizer, then you don't need venture funding necessarily to throw a bunch of fuel on something that's not quite ready or the timing isn't quite there. So, with respect to product market fit, how do you know that that your company, right, has product market fit today?
I measure it. So when we talk to our customers, I typically don't approach a customer conversation as a demonstration. I approach a customer conversation as strategy. And very quickly into that conversation, you understand how aligned you are with the customer's strategy and the customer's readiness to adopt your product. Typically, you start to see very clear pilot guidelines. You are exiting your pilots with very clear KPI and OKR. You see very high number of users logging into your platform during the pilots. You have amazing usage times during that pilot. You start to see a high engagement from the users of your platform on the features that they need, what they like, what they don't like, and just this general energy and excitement that comes as part of that engagement. The second thing that you start to see is when you engage with customers in these in our lead generation efforts, the customer tends to talk to other decision makers that are in their network without me having to request it. And some of these are very early signs of product market fit where almost your customers start reaching out to you, validating your hypothesis, validating what you are building. And the early conversations start with, hey, I'm also having this issue, this kind of pain point. I want to partner with you. And let's see what the impact that we can make here. And so when you start to see culturally, the mindset of decision makers is open to receiving the solution that you're building as a company, those are some kind of early signs. And then obviously, every week, every month, we look at very diligently look at our KPIs and OKRs to see what is our MAU, what is our DAU. We have in-product feedback and trust scores that we measure. And so it's things like how accurate are our agents in kind of hitting the outcomes or the outputs that PMs are looking for. So we receive like real-time in-product feedback. And so we plot this in-product feedback and we kind of look at, okay, are we hitting the right pain points? Are we solving the user's problem? Are they generally happy with the product? And product market fit is not like this one thing or this one OKR that you see, but it's a culmination of many positive signals that that start to kind of come towards you, where you realize, hey, maybe I've hit something here, maybe I'm hitting traction, and that's how at least I look at it as a business leader.
Yeah, I love that. I love that aspect of saying, hey, if you're inviting people to the dinner party, there might be some good wine there. There might be some good food there. There may be a good product experience when your customers are inviting their coworkers on the decision-making process, as well as are they actually sharing this with other potential customers? So I really love that. And you mentioned culture too. Out of curiosity, what is your cultural background and what role does that cultural background play in the way that you drive strategy to get more customers so that you can be more self-funded instead of necessarily relying on maybe other types of funding that would come in from venture capitals, funds, family offices, like you said, who may have family legacy goals or other objectives to get a return on their money rather than serving the customers, or angels who are just taking a big bet on an early stage company. What role does your culture play in that process?
Um, so I'll talk about a little bit about my background, but I will also kind of talk about the right culture that's needed with everything going on in AI within a customer's culture to be able to adopt AI platforms. So I come from a culture of I'm obviously from India, but I grew up in a family that are entrepreneurs for 4+ generations. And my family is in multiple different kinds of businesses, but they are all generational businesses. They're not venture capital businesses. Everything is bootstrapped. So I come from a culture where you have a maniacal focus on your customers. You have a deep mission towards your team, and you have a culture of trust that you have in relationships. And I think that's what I carry forward with me all throughout my career and in this company. Is every relationship is based on trust, transparency, and doing the right thing always by the customer and not taking shortcuts. So that's a little bit about my cultural beliefs and background. But I think in terms of AI, what's extremely important at a customer that's trying to adopt the future of work is having the mind share of their employees as they are trying to deploy these platforms. And that is oftentimes what we find is the leadership is fully bought into adopting AI and future of work. But when you take these platforms to the workers or the knowledge workers in the organization, they're extremely worried that this is a precursor to a job replacement. So oftentimes they don't adopt AI because they feel that that's a threat to their jobs. And somewhere there is a disconnect between the leadership and their team. So to be successfully able to deploy AI or any kind of technology that brings about a transformation and organizational change, it's extremely important to look at the people aspect of the adoption, which is has the goal or the outcome been clearly communicated between leadership and their organization. Second, what is the outcome that the overarching cross-functional organization or the benefits they are going to get by adopting this particular AI solution? Third is have the knowledge workers receive the right training, the right change management mechanisms, and does this entire adoption journey have a certain structure? Because if you treat future of work as a tool deployment without having the right OKRs and without looking at your technology, your people, and your enterprise architecture, if you haven't figured out how you're going to manage audit trails, identity of agents, how you are going to govern AI within your organizations, it's not going to be successful. So to me, culture is a blend of the values that you have as people, but it's also the connection that you have between the leadership and their organizations in a large enterprise.
Yeah, I love that, by the way. Thanks for sharing that culture piece in terms of your background. Yes. And then I like that soundbite, the maniacal focus on customers and integrating that deeply into the tech. So if you're tuning in right now for the first time, we've got lots of questions. Please keep posting those questions in the chat. That's one of the benefits of going live stream. We've got a wonderful guest here, Nita Laad, the CEO and founder of a applied AI company here in San Francisco on the call. So we're going to go ahead and get to those questions later. But I do have one more thought for you, which is kind of an interesting question. So whether or not you take on funding is a whole nother conversation. But let's just say you do take on funding. How do you accurately and efficiently deploy $2 million into your business as a founder? And for the investors who are wanting to invest into businesses, how do you kind of serve those investors as well as make sure that you're deploying that funding internally?
I think that's an excellent question. And I think your strategic choice points and your business plan has to be in place before you kind of take on that external funding. Now, the choice that you have to make as a founder is what are you focusing on at that point of time? Are you going to deploy funds more into product development, more towards innovation that's going to help you attract more customers? Are you going to invest dollars into more of your operations, where you're trying to build up your systems and your team to be able to go after a certain opportunity? And so there's no like one size fits all that I could typically answer, but this varies by founder to founder and really depends on where you're trying to kind of take the company based on the trajectory that you're on. But specifically, you know, when you take dollars towards pre-seed or seed or even series A, you're typically trying to build up a team that can kind of set up different functions within the company, whether it's operations, whether it's scaling your lead generation, your sales, or your product development. So a split between that is something you got to figure out that's right for your business and for your specific customers that you serve. So I could not answer that more specifically for the audience, but it's
Right.
an analysis that every founder has to go through scenario planning to kind of get there.
Nice. Scenario planning. That's a blast from the past in deep product management. So let's just say if you were to split between sales, product dev, and support team right now, let's say at an early stage company preparing for Series A funding, where would you recommend what are the questions you'd be asking yourself in terms of how you would determine that use of funds table?
I think you, as you kind of launch your product and work with your initial customers, you generally have an understanding of what kind of product development you need to invest in and what kind of typically request or support volumes you get as a company. The beauty of this moment right now is you don't need humans across every function all the time. A lot of the front load of your work or customer interaction can be handled by AI agents. And that's how we run our company at Nexia AI. A lot of our first interactions, a lot of our lead generation or support interactions are actually handled by agents first, which also speeds up the time to resolution or the time to interaction with the customer. The initial, low-hanging fruit is kind of taken up by agents. And so we go through a scenario planning, cost analysis to understand where is the efficacy of AI agents versus humans. And then also a question of what specific RACI or what specific responsibilities do humans versus AI kind of take on? What is the efficacy of each? And then what are the cost to ROI benefits of each? And that is what allows us to understand where do we invest in infrastructure versus humans versus agents to kind of drive to the outcome that we're looking for over the next 12, 24, 36 months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm excited to get into our second topic. But before that, I have a couple more funding related questions. So, usage and adoption, we did talk about that. At what point do you convert, or how do you convert usage into revenue predictability?
So one of the strategic choices we've made right now is
Mhm.
we don't offer free trials. Our
Nice.
product is is an onboarding product, and
Mhm.
we only have paid customers, and that is what actually helps to prove that product market fit.
Yeah.
If a customer is willing to pay for your product, and the willingness to pay kind of varies depending on what use cases or pain points are most important to that customer and their segment and the vertical, of course. But
Yeah.
but in
What a
in
power
my
move, by the way. It's like we don't do free trials or demos. We do onboarding and strategy. And
we
if you
do
don't pay,
demos.
you're not our customer. What a strong
We
statement.
we do demos. In fact, we have very sophisticated interactive
Mm,
demos where interested customers can actually
right.
click through our entire product and experience it before they onboard.
Mhm.
But but using this strategy, what it's done is we are working very closely with the customers that are absolutely 100% interested in the mission and the product, and that is what helps us to accelerate towards the next phase in our journey.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say that's the right move for every company, but our product is generally an organization wide product, because the
Right.
beauty of our product is not just an individual product manager running some analysis. We allow the general manager to kind of look at the signals across the entire product line, across all their product managers, and figure out where the human needs to interact versus AI kind of doing the work. And let me give you an example. A classic point of friction in product management is when the PMs talk to customers through qual and quant surveys versus when they get idea intake from sales and partner organizations. They often hear exactly opposing ideas. AI can flag those ideas, but AI cannot go and resolve and negotiate that scenario to come to the right priorities for the roadmap. And that's the beauty of Nexia AI is we identify across multiple product managers what the signals and the friction points are, and we escalate that up to the general manager so that they can get a full 360 view of the product across their entire team and be able to kick into that decision making mode of this is where the data and the feedback don't match. These are the areas where I see friction between sales and partner organizations that I got to go resolve to be able to figure out what my short and long term priorities are. And that's the reason why a free trial just doesn't make sense for us, because this is not a product that you can run across one rule in isolation. It's not a consumer product, it's an enterprise wide product. And we'll see how that plays out in the near future, but that's where we stand.
And we're back. Technical difficulties do happen, and I love that perspective on product management and the product itself, leading the strategy and also being a like a GM solution, right? So I really do like that. So I'm excited to get into our second area of topics based on our main category of faith.
Focusing on faith for a moment.
Human purpose in the age of AI, what a relevant topic. And we started to get into that earlier. So, what does human purpose mean to you, Nita?
I think for me, through my entire life, I believe in technology as a medium to accelerate human potential. Because the biggest risk, according to me, to humans is the wasted potential of our intelligence and our capabilities. So when me as a founder and or us as a company are building product, our products are designed in such a way that we make sure it's not about AI leading the human, but AI being in service of the human, which is the product is engineered in such an experience where we look at the repeated actions or the repeated analysis that the human kind of conducts or a day in their life, and we try to replace that or support them with the use of AI. But our architecture very much is a human in the loop architecture, where at every step in the workflow a human has to review and rate and accept or give feedback to the AI to support them better. And that is what I mean by elevating the role of the human. With Nexia AI's platform, our goal is to be a chief of staff or an assistant to every product manager and to every product general manager out there. So the technology itself is built to an experience where the AI does the job for the human and then sends the notification to the human. For example, we have an agent that actually conducts sentiment analysis across public forums to look at what do your customers saying about your product, what is their general sentiment on your product, and every night our agent conducts that analysis and sends notifications to the product manager if the sentiment or certain comments on the product have changed, so that the product manager can actually review them. And so we look at how do we offload some of this administrative and drudgery work from our users to be able to help them to drive to better, more intelligent outcomes for their businesses.
Yeah, I love that. There were so many good sound bites there, so many good human sound bites that AI would not be able to say. So my next question or thought is, how do you integrate humans into the product market fit, or what does human market fit look like in an AI maybe over obsessed world today?
For me, or for us, we just like humans, right? Humans that work in an organization get
Mhm.
a performance rating,
Right,
right? Every quarter or every year, you kind of get this rating which says you're meeting expectations, you're beating expectations, and these are the
right,
improvements you need to make. In our world, AI gets that performance rating from every user. So
right.
every output that our platform creates actually has an in-product feedback feature where the human can rate the output that the AI created on a scale of 1 to 5, and they can actually write, text feedback to the AI to say, I need you to do this better. In our backend, we call these trust scores. We look at these ratings and these trust scores, and we try to adapt our AI agents to do better work for that human. And so
Yeah,
that direct feedback from that human, that's very real time based on the kind of outputs that they're looking for, is the first feedback that's most important to us. Second, when we kind of go into the enterprise, we obviously conduct, pilot readings. We measure KPIs, OKRs, we look at BVAs. So there are specific assessments that we conduct with every customer as we deploy into the organization. And then obviously there are relationships. Like I said, I believe in the power of relationships. So I specifically right now, very much in touch with all of our customers to understand what they like, what they don't like, irrespective of whether they want to adopt the product or not.
right.
And I think that's how you kind of elevate the human or kind of make sure you're in service to the humans.
Yeah, that's so good, Nita. This conversation has just become a really beautiful, organic conversation. And this idea of trust score is so relevant today, especially when there's so much AI, there's so many people in this world who are asking, is this really a human or is it a bot? And so when we think about how do humans interact with artificial intelligence, especially in your applied AI product, having a trust score that closes that feedback loop, giving a human the ability to thumbs up, thumbs down, and add text is such an important qualitative piece. And then now you can integrate that direct feedback into your product, into your customer journey. So I'm curious, where do humans still outperform machines clearly?
Humans outperform, like one of the examples that we talked about is
Mhm.
when you want to negotiate conflict, when you want to sell to your customer. A customer
Right.
is not, making a choice point to buy a product because they saw some, messaging, or an agent spoke to them. That's
Right.
inherently a human ability: empathy, trust,
Mhm.
security, alignment of values. That's where humans need to come in. And like I said, building strategy, I fundamentally believe that AI should not be building your company or your product strategy. Like, that's very uniquely you.
Right.
There are elements in every business where the decision is made purely based on data and data analytics, where there is a quantitative element to the decision, but there's
Mhm.
also a very much a business acumen or a qualitative element to a decision. The qualitative element, which is vision, strategy, figuring out the next innovation curve, I feel these
Right.
are inherently human led functions that will
I like
never
that.
go away. So, in this moment, what's very important for every professional to kind of think about is, what are the parts of my day that are mechanical, that are quantitative, where AI has high efficiency? How do I use this as a tool similar to a calculator, and
Right.
use that tool to accelerate myself or to elevate myself into a higher skill set of driving outcomes to my business? And this is a very key moment that's going to help us to shape pretty much the future of our professional journeys here.
Yeah, no, I like that. It's kind of like you first had the abacus, which help you to count tens and twenties and on different scales. And then the calculator, right? But still, you need to understand the math behind the calculations. So
Absolutely.
similar with AI and technology, I'm really hearing you say, look, there's a human element of strategy, of decision making, of which technology to adopt, and also we need humans to turn off the technology as well if the AI misbehaves, and there become ethical concerns around what the AI has control over. So how do you maintain that kind of ethical and moral components when you're building this technology where AI may be making some hallucinations or some decisions that might not align with that human purpose or your faith-based values?
That's an excellent question, David. And I touched upon it a little bit kind of earlier in our conversation, which is when you are interacting with the customer, number one, you have to be extremely clear about the use cases the technology can solve. And obviously, when you come to AI and autonomous agents, there are obviously risks that come with it. And so, having a very clear conversation on the risks that are involved, these specific use cases where AI may not have great efficiency, that's a fantastic discussion to have. But then, when it comes to readiness, there's also that question of I think we've heard several cases of agents going rogue where a goal based agent keeps iterating in recursion forever. But the question is also about, how do you digitally maintain audit trails within number one, our solution, and second, number two, which is at the customer's organization, right? So if things go wrong, how do you effectively and very quickly escalate within the customer's framework or with Nexia AI? That's part one. Part two is, when things don't go right, what are the specific SLAs that we are willing to sign up for? And how are we as a company on both sides set up to meet those SLAs? Third is the human governance that we touched upon a little bit, which is, how are you going to, it's not just in product feedback, but as a cross functional organization at the customer site, How is there a committee that's set up to actually effectively govern AI, to look at trust scores, to look at efficacy scores, to look at risks and audit, and when it comes to agents, there's a discussion to be had on what is that agentic identity. Is the agent assuming the identity and permissions of the human that it represents, or does the agent need to have its own identity and have a lower level of access and control and authority when it starts to access data? And so these are very important conversations to be had, and obviously, structures to be put in place as you are going through enterprise AI deployment, especially in the future.
That view of infinite recursion just had me laughing and chuckling. I was just thinking about the rogue agent that goes into infinite recursion. And I ran into a perfect example of that last night where I had Claude Cowork. And not to get too deep on technicals, so this could be timeless, but it went into that infinite recursion, and I had to press a pause button and say, hold on a second, don't use all my credits right now. You're being very inefficient resourcefully. And anecdotally, I have an elderly brother who we worked together for a while, and the AI really loves to put a lot of like extra pseudo code in there to be really inefficient. So prompting your AI and actually being more outcome driven with your technology and bringing that human purpose component is such an important factor in building not just a technology company today, but a technology company or a business operation that's future proof and future ready. And that's a perfect segue into our third category of funding, faith, and future.
Let's talk about quantum and the future of technology.
All right, quantum technology is here. We're talking about all things faith, funding, and future. And today we're going to focus even more so on that governance piece. In fact, balancing enterprise governance and AI autonomy. Let's just start with, what does enterprise governance mean to you?
Enterprise governance. Okay, so let's kind of break that down a little bit.
Exactly.
Generally, when you talk about technology governance, it's basically management, audit, and kind of control of that technology to make sure that it's not exposing your organization to unnecessary risk or compliance issues. But when you kind of take this into the enterprise, the risk profile gets significantly increased, because your scale is much bigger, your customer base is much higher, and so your exposure is a lot more, needs to be a lot more contained when you're an enterprise. Right. When you are deploying AI within an enterprise, you got to have, as I mentioned earlier, the footprint tracking and the structures and the processes in place to be able to manage this technology. And that's not, and it's not just for Nexia, is not just a product management function. To be able to effectively govern AI, irrespective of whether you use an external company like Nexia AI, and a lot of enterprises actually choose to build, their own future of work platforms. In either case, it's extremely important that you figure out what your agentic workflow looks like, the different resources in your organization that it touches, the different permission levels that these agents or your humans have, and how your use cases kind of span across the different RACI that's held by humans and agents. Second, when you talk about governance, typically there is a cross-functional governance committee that best-in-class organizations deploy. It has representatives from your engineering organizations, your IT organizations, your legal organizations, your compliance organizations, because AI is not something that, it's a technology that you're deploying in a silo somewhere. It touches your entire organization. So you have to be crystal clear about the level of risk that each of these use cases expose your organization to, how you're going to govern and control that risk. And typically, this is a cross-functional discussion with like I said, HR, legal, everybody needs to be involved to be able to review and contain that risk to make sure you as an organization are operating within the realms and within the boundaries of what you've set for yourself legally as well as culturally.
Yeah, I love that. So actually, this topic just came up in an organization that I volunteer with called AI and Faith. It's a pluralistic, faith-based religious coordination organization that brings all of the religions of the world together to drive ethical and moral integration into tech, bringing the world's wisdom to the current technology. And so this is actually our theme for the month of April and May, which is governance in technology. And so very practically, if an organization does not have a governing body that oversees kind of those ethics and moral discussions, but more importantly, the de-risking factors, as you mentioned, to mitigate risk and liability, who are the key players or the key organizations? I think you mentioned engineering and HR and legal, but who really needs to be at that table? And how would one organization who's interested in doing this get started internally?
The best in class committees that I've seen thus far,
Mhm.
are typically driven from the C-suite.
Right. So
It's a
C-suite is on board, and they then build up this committee, essentially this governance organization.
Absolutely. And the governance organization is a cross-functional body, typically
Got
that audits and kind of sets the policies and the processes and the KPIs for AI. And they
Right.
are reading out to the C-suite on a regular basis on how your internal processes or your audit functions or your risk profile, or the efficacy of AI looks like within your organization. And
Mhm.
and this is, like I said, it's a very tops down kind of
Right.
engagement versus it being bottoms up.
Right.
I don't see it being any other way. The commitment, the strategy, the outcomes that you set for your company has to be tops down and cross functional.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. It's gotta be, driven from the top, strategically and from an executive perspective, but also, right, organically from the bottoms up as well, providing those, highways and roads for which that governance can be definitely executed upon. So what would you say, since we're product-led here, what is that MVP for a governance council look like?
Typically, a governance council has very clear ownership, has a very clear RACI structure, very clear escalation paths, and
Right.
very clear gradation of risk, which is like the rogue agent that we talked about. If an agent goes rogue, who are the specific entities that need to be informed? What are the methods or the vectors that we're going to use to inform those entities? What are the SLAs once an escalation path is hit? How do we resolve it? And once we do resolve a certain governance escalation, how do we kind of prevent that kind of escalation from occurring again within an organization? And finally is the change management piece. Every time you kind of run into an issue that you kind of run into as an organization, how are you going to change manage that across the entire organization? How do you send out communications? How do you profile it? And how do you adapt your processes so that that does not happen again? But what I also want to stress upon is AI right now is not heavily regulated. Regulations are still trailing behind innovation by
Right.
18 to 24 months, which is why this internal governance has
Right.
to offset and balance the lack of regulation to make sure organizations stay safe, they stay secure, and they stay within the legal realms of good faith business.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. What a great soundbite. Technology is leading legal, and you need these governance, enterprise governance councils in good faith organizations. I love that. Okay, well, this has been such a great conversation. We've got two last segments. The next one is a rapid fire question and answer segments, either or 3 to 5 word answers. So don't be too nervous, Nita. You've been
Oh my
doing very
gosh.
great.
You
You're
didn't
showing
prepare me for
it
this.
on live stream. What's that?
You did not prepare me for this.
Exactly.
So
I can't prepare you for rapid fire. It's called a rapid fire for a reason. Okay, so it's easy. I'll start with some easy ones. So bootstrap or VC?
start with Bootstrap.
Exactly. All right. Product first or sales first?
Product first.
Awesome. Okay, now we're going to go to round 2, which is early revenue or user growth?
User growth.
PMF, product market fit, or storytelling?
PMF.
Of course. Nice. Data moat or distribution moat?
Distribution mode.
All right. And round 3 before we get into Beyond the Bag. So AI agents or co-pilots?
Agents.
Faith or logic in decisions?
Both.
Ooh,
Am I
okay.
allowed
And
to
then
say that?
what's that? Yeah, okay, that's fine. I'll let it pass. And then founder energy or operator rigor?
It depends. Depends on the
Okay.
phase you're
Okay.
at, but operator rigor is more important.
Okay, yeah. Awesome. And then what wins in the next decade in 3 to 7 words? Or
What
essentially
wins?
what wins in the next 10 years?
Customers loving your product. There
I
is
love
no
it.
way. There's no other.
Well, that's fantastic. You did great on rapid fire. See, it wasn't that bad.
It was scary. I didn't know what you were gonna ask,
Yeah,
but thank
exactly.
you. Awesome.
All right, so now we're gonna go to our final segment, Beyond the Bag. It's one of my favorite segments. Beyond the Bag, Beyond the Bag, Beyond the Bag. Okay, so if you're tuning in for the first time, this is a special segment where we ask our guests what is something that they always travel with, take a peek inside their bag, they pick one thing and share with us. I have no idea what you're going to pick, Nita, but I'm very curious. Beyond the bag, what's
I
beyond your
decide what's beyond my bag, something I always travel with. So I'm in sunny California, so I don't think this will surprise you. My sunglasses, I just
Okay,
picked it out of
nice.
my bag, and I'm a big fan of different kinds of sunglasses. So I'm a techie, but I'm not showing you any tech stuff, which might be a change.
Yeah, that
But
is a change unless those are like some special like designer Ray-Bans that have cameras on them and blue and blue lenses, blue light filters. No, that's so good. Thank you so much. That was actually a surprise. I appreciate that. All right. So, what is the best way, Nita, for folks to stay connected with you?
I'm very active on LinkedIn. So the best way is to connect with me on LinkedIn, or for someone that wants to engage with me professionally or with Nexia AI, our contact address is contact@nexiausa.com. Those are the two ways you can get in touch with me.
Wonderful. Well, this has been a wonderful show today. Thank you so much for joining Funding Faith and Future. Best of luck to you. This was a really good conversation, so very relevant, and I can't wait for the team to clip this up and share this out with our audiences so that more people can benefit not only from the knowledge but also from the application and the cultural conversations that we had together on this show. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you so much, David, for having me.
Bye bye. See you guys next
Bye.
time.